Hello there, welcome to the Algorithmic Trading School for Beginners. In this video, which is video 5, we're going to show you how to debug your code using Visual Studio 2015. So this is for people that are writing algorithms for cTrader and they're using cAlgo and they want to use Visual Studio and they want to debug the code and to help themselves kind of be more productive, and I'll go through later on the benefits of doing it anyway. So if you've not used Visual Studio before or cAlgo, I recommend looking at some of these videos at the top. They give you an overview of the platforms, Visual Studio and cAlgo and coding standards. Okay, so I'm going to go straight in and show you a project that we're going to use. This is a project I just called Visual Studio Debugging. It's just a trading robot that does a trailing stop. And what we're going to do is, the first thing I'm going to show you is the first stage or the first phase of debugging with the IDE, and that is to actually identify bugs as you're writing them, so that when you build them it tells you what they are. So this is the first phase. If you click on the solution at the top here and go to Configuration Manager, the active configuration when you start is debug. Now what that does, it builds, when you build the solution or the project, it builds a larger file size, so it includes debug symbols, so that when you run the application, say in cTrader or cAlgo, it allows you to step through the code in this window here and debug it. Once you deploy it as release. Now that releases it, that builds it as a smaller file size and runs a lot faster. But I'm pretty much sure when cAlgo does a build, it does it as release anyway, automatically. Okay, so that's the two there. So what I'm going to show you first of all is, when I build this, you want to look at a window to see if there's any bugs. So as you're writing your code, you want to go down to error list. So this is the window you're probably going to have open up as you're writing your code. Mostly because as you're writing your code, if I take a semicolon away, it shows up down here. It shows there's a semicolon missing. Okay, I'll put the semicolon back. What I'm going to do now is show you, I'm going to create a variable which is unused. So I'll just do a variable which is an integer, and I'm just going to say unused. Oops, I put an underscore there. Unused equals 5. Okay, so what that's going to do now, it's not showing up any warnings or errors, but if I go to do a build, and it's building the algo file, it'll come up with one warning to say that that parameter is unused. It's an unassigned variable, it's not being used. So not only is it good for debugging, it helps you write more structured or better code. Okay, so again, if I do a variable, if I do a string and call it bad string, if I can spell, bad string, bad sting, bad string equals 5, and because I'm assigning a 5 to a string, that's an error. It doesn't like it. You can't implicitly convert a type int to a string. Now what they've got down here in this window is a link, and if you click on there, it opens up Bing. I'm not sure anybody uses that, but it opens up Bing, and it actually, if you click on the error on Stack Overflow, it'll tell you all about the error. So it gives you information at your fingertips as the errors occur. It saves you having to go in and type into Google search engine. It actually knows exactly what the best information is for you to get, and that's quite useful. So again, it gives you an error warning there. So another useful feature, if I change this unused variable, something else that it's very good for is a thing called refactoring, and what that means is a way of rewriting your code, or another way of writing your code, which is probably better, a better way of doing it. So in this case, we're declaring a private variable, doing it like this, but there is actually a better way to do it. And normally it will come up with a little light bulb there, but if you click on there, quick actions and refactoring, it actually tells you can encapsulate it as a property. Okay, so if you encapsulate it as a property, if you click on preview changes, it actually shows you what it's going to do when it does it, and it's going to put it under the user-defined parameters. If I click apply, it's actually put it under here actually, so I take it out of there and put it down here. So this gives you an alternative way of writing this variable, which is as a property, which is probably a better way of doing it. It's a nicer, better way of doing it. So that's just one little demonstration there. So once you're finished, that you've, if I build it now, and you want to build it and it wants to compile, because obviously it needs to compile, there's no errors or warnings. Once you've done all that, if I just go view output window, you can switch between the two here actually. If I go output window, get rid of all of that, And if I do a thing called, once you're happy that you've fixed all the bugs and everything's okay and you've built it and it's built clean, just run a code analysis on it. Run a code analysis on the project. And that'll tell you if there is any other issues with the program. You want to run this once just before you've finished it. And it's very, you can see running code analysis, complete, no errors or warnings. It's a very useful thing to use. Okay, that's that. That's your first line of defense as you're writing your code and fixing any little bugs. And as I mentioned previously in the videos, you should avoid all of this if you create a good design document and if you follow coding standards, which is covered on this area here. So if you write a good design document and your design of your project is good and you're following coding standards, that really reduces the amount of bugs you're going to introduce into the system. So that makes things a lot easier. Again, if you were to just what we call a heroic programming, if you didn't have a design document, you just go in there and write code. And I must admit, I do it myself. I'm terrible at it. But in the end, you write it and you think, oh, it'll only be quick. And you spend hours going over the same problem. Then if you sit down literally for 5 minutes with a piece of paper, or I go for a walk, and you resolve it in 5 minutes because your brain thinks a little bit differently. So again, what I'm going to show you now then is the next stage, which is debugging your code with runtime, which means that as the robot is running with cTrader or cAlgo, you're going to debug the code. Now, I've had some weird and wonderful things happening with Visual Studio 2015 because I had 2013 and I've upgraded, so there's there might be a few hiccups on the debugging front. But the actual idea behind debugging your code at runtime is things like your system crashes completely, you have no idea why, you haven't put enough error handling in it, or say a position is opening or closing and it's not doing what it should do. It should do it, say, when a certain indicator value is at a certain value and another value is at another value, and all of these values together, you want to look at all this data and see exactly through the code, step through the code and see what it's doing. And normally 9 times out of 10 you can identify it straight away, and then you go like that, oh my god, yeah, and then you just fix the code. So what we're going to do is put a breakpoint here. What I've done, I had this here, this bit of code in the onTick method. And a bit of word of warning, if you debug in the onTick method, it's fine, but it means the onTick method gets called many times per second because obviously it's every time there's a price change. And it can cause problems. It doesn't have to. You can step through your code I've done it hundreds of times, but just for this demonstration, because I don't want any hiccups, I've put it in the onStart, which means this method only gets called once, and I've got no problems with the debugger freaking out on me, really. So I put a breakpoint on this boolean. This here is in the robot. Oh, again, there you go. This is a good example. The robot is still running, but I've built it with the debug symbols. So that won't work. You need to stop the robot. Then you need to go back to the code. And then you need to build it again. So it needs to build. If the robot is running, it won't. It's still loaded in memory. It won't. Your new robot that you've built won't work. So I've built it now, and then the robot is there. Okay. And I just want to quickly show you include trailing stop yes. And what that means is this parameter here means if include trailing stop, I could have put equals yes, true, which is the same. It's the same thing. So I'm just saying if the user is selected to include trailing stop, it will then jump into this next line of code here. Okay. So I've done that. It's been built. So I just want to go debug, attach to process. And what that means is you can attach to the process of another application. So we can attach to the process of cAlgo, or we can attach the process of cTrader. So if you have cTrader running, you can attach to drag the robot onto the chart of cTrader, run that, and debug it on there. You can also debug it, just quickly while I'm at it, remotely. So this is actually calling one of my VPS servers, which is hosted in another country. And this is actually will allow me to debug code that is on another machine in another country. So I'll tell you why it's there. I have no idea why it's doing that. So this allows you to do that. So you can do remote debugging as well. And that's pretty cool. And that's a more advanced bit of thing we can show you later. Okay, so the next thing I want to do was attach to process. I'm still going through that. I'm just waffling, aren't I? So attach to cAlgo. I click attach. Okay. That's loaded the debug symbols. It's now attached to cAlgo. It's waiting. So I then go to cAlgo and I run the robot. Now when I run it, what's going to happen is it's going to call the onStart method, which is when the robot gets called once, and it's going to stop there. So if I go to cAlgo and run, and the code has stopped. So we're going to press now. We're stopped. The code has stopped. So I'm going to talk layman's terms as much as possible so you understand what I'm saying. So what I need to do now is step around the code and look at the values. So I'm going to use shortcut keys, but up here you've got debug buttons. So you've got step out F11, step over F10, step into F11. Oh, that's Shift F11. So I use mostly shortcut keys F11 and F10. I'll show you why. To step to the next line, I just press F10. It's now gone to the next line of code. Now I want to step into that method down here, which is manage trailing stops. I want to go into that. So I press F11. It's now stepped into here. Okay, so now I'm in this method. It's waiting. What I've written here is just a demonstration. I've written a variable balance, which actually gets the account balance, which is here. This is the API coming from the cTrader's API, or cAlgo's API, to get access of your account information from your broker or your trading information. So I'm going to show you two here, your trading information and your account information. So if I just click the down button there, it actually tells me here the balance, the broker name, the currency. It's got all the information down here. You can either view it that way, or you can right click, or you can just hover your mouse over balance and it tells me the balance. Or you can right click over the object and go to Quick Watch, and Quick Watch will actually show you all that information in here and any pending orders, and actually shows you the positions as well actually. So you've got everything there. So you can step through this and look at all the data. This is real-time data that's coming at that time, and that's very useful. And again down here you've got positions. You can click on positions, expand it, you've got to refresh it there, expand the results view, and it's got the values for the positions there, current values for that positions. So if you wanted to know why a position wasn't doing what it should do, you can actually look here and see how many pips it was or whatever, and you can actually compare a lot of the values. And again, if you just press F10, and then if you press F11, I'm not sure what it would do if it jumped into this method. If it goes crazy, I'll come out. No, it didn't do it. So that gives you a rough idea anyway of stepping through the code and how to access those values. That's all I wanted to show you on that. So I'm going to stop the debugger. That will allow the code to continue. The robot is still continuing. And again, if you ever wanted it to start again and you wanted to debug, as long as you haven't modified the source code, I go back to the debugger. If I attach the debugger again, take that breakpoint from there and put it here, and then I'm not sure if I showed you this. The conditional for breakpoints, you can add conditional conditions. I'll show this another time, or you can do some research. But every time you add a breakpoint, you can add conditions. You can have conditions or actions, so you can decide what to do. It's more involved what you want to do. So there is more to debugging than what I've showed you. I'm just showing you a very big overview of it, really. So what I'm going to do now is attach it again to cAlgo. Like I said, I could just attach it to cTrader. It cannot be set because I've messed about with it. I have to rebuild it. So I hope you have fun with the debugging. Once you get used to it, anyway, you'll find it very useful to use. It can be a little bit because I've just upgraded. Mine's a little bit flaky at the moment. I don't know why. I might have to do a fresh install. But in general, you'll find the development environment of Visual Studio very useful, and I advise you to do some more research on the debugging, things you can do with the debugging, things you can do with the code analysis. So there's a lot to learn, but you don't need to learn it all. You just need to learn the basics. That's all you need. And again, you've got a thing called bookmarks here. Just quick, I was going to show you last time. So if I click a bookmark there, and I go down the screen and I click a bookmark here, it allows you to skip around the code. So if you're working on code in different areas, it'll allow you to skip about between those areas just by clicking on there, and it'll jump between the two. And there's also Bookmark Manager somewhere here where you can access it and look at all the bookmarks. And the other thing you can do is you can drag this window down, so you can look at the variables up there while you're working on something else down here. There's so many things to learn, but I'm just showing you the basics of debugging for today, and I hope you found that useful. I'm just going to try and think if there's anything else I wanted to show you while I was at it. I don't think there is. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that is it. Okay, I hope you found that useful.